Welcome to today's Explainer. We're diving into Walter C. Kaiser Jr.'s truly fascinating concept, known as the Promise Plan of God. Today, we are embarking on this epic journey to look at the immense architectural coherence of the Bible. Seriously, if you've ever wondered how the various books, the covenants, and the deeply complex histories of the biblical canon all fit together into one continuous thread, well, you are in the exact right place. Let's set the stage for this mystery.
Okay, so let's kick things off with a massive question. Is the Bible just this fragmented anthology of competing voices, or is it a single, unified story? Right now, modern biblical scholarship is facing a profound hermeneutical crisis. Basically, there's a huge struggle over how to interpret the text and make sense of its ultimate coherence without, just forcing our own modern ideas onto it. So here's the tension. On one hand, post-Enlightenment rationalism often chops the text up into all these disconnected historical fragments and edits. But on the other hand, classical systematic theologies sometimes try to fix this by imposing artificial, external philosophical superstructures, grids basically, just to force harmony. And the result? We risk completely losing the text's natural native logic. To make sense of all of this, here is our roadmap for today. First, we'll look at the coherence crisis. Second, traditional frameworks. Third, Kaiser's promise plan. Fourth, reversing cosmic rebellions. And fifth, the unified olive tree. Section 1, the coherence crisis. Section 2, traditional frameworks. To truly recover the Bible's self-attesting authority, we really have to look for an organizing center that arises natively from the scriptures themselves. Historically, there are two dominant paradigms that have attempted to solve this crisis alongside Kaiser's model. Each has genuine strengths and definitely some pedagogical utility, but also distinct limitations in how they view the timeline. You can see how covenant theology uses the federal covenant of grace, dispensationalism uses distinct administrative economies, while epangelicalism relies on a single expanding promise. Let's contrast those two traditional systems for a moment. Covenant theology powerfully unites the storyline, for sure, but its reliance on non-historical covenants often flattens the text and tends to lean into supersessionism, which is the idea that the church entirely replaces Israel in God's plan. Dispensationalism, conversely, fiercely defends historical grammatical exegesis and Israel's concrete promises, but it can introduce some radical canonical discontinuities, historically treating the church as a parenthesis or kind of a plan B. Section 3. Kaiser's Promise Plan. This brings us to Walter C. Kaiser Jr.'s concept of Epangelicalism. This model operates as the via media, the middle way, an organic solution to our crisis that doesn't rely on outside philosophical grids. The term is derived from the Greek word epangelia, meaning promise. But in the biblical sense, it's not just a casual commitment. It's an immutable, legally binding word act rooted directly in divine character. It's an expanding, diachronic promise, meaning it unfolds continuously across time, not just a static prediction waiting for some distant endpoint. I love to think of it through this organic metaphor. Evangelicalism is like a tiny seed growing into a massive, mature oak tree. That original seed in Genesis 3 actually contains the complete genetic DNA of the mature tree right from the very beginning. As redemptive history moves forward, Kaiser's model proved that the Bible isn't a series of stops and restarts. It is one living organism. Subsequent biblical covenants simply enrich, enlarge, and build upon that original genetic promise. They don't replace the former layers at all. And we can actually trace this continuous trajectory right through the text, starting with the seed in Genesis 3:15, expanding to Abraham's global blessing, receiving instructional scaffolding at Sinai, moving to Davidic kingship, internalizing via the new covenant, all the way into Romans 11. Again, this isn't an artificial grid imposed from the outside. This represents the canon's absolutely native progressive architecture. Section 4. Reversing cosmic rebellions. To really grasp the depth of this promise plan, we need to shift our mindset into the ancient cognitive environment and kind of step onto an epic supernatural battlefield. First up, we have to adopt Hebraic block logic. Western reductionist thought demands neat, linear, non-contradictory systemization. But ancient Hebraic logic, it comfortably juxtaposes complementary or even paradoxical truths, like the absolute election of ethnic Israel on one hand and the universal inclusion of Gentiles on the right alongside it. It just holds them in tension, side by side, without demanding immediate speculative philosophical resolution. Applying this ancient mindset to Genesis 1, as scholar John H. Walton points out, reveals a functional cosmology. Genesis 1 isn't primarily an account of material origins in the modern scientific sense we're used to. It's actually about establishing functional order in a cosmic temple. Yahweh's rest on the seventh day is him taking up residence in his sanctuary.
And humans, we are installed as democratized royal priests, living icons commissioned to mediate his presence and expand the boundaries of Eden.
Now, when we integrate Michael S. Heiser's divine council worldview, it reveals the exact supernatural crisis this promised plan has to fix. Human depravity didn't just stem from a single event. Cosmic brokenness is actually the result of three compounded supernatural fractures. So let's quickly walk through this three-part fracture. First, the Edenic rebellion introduced sin, mortality, and spatial exile from God's unmediated presence. Second, the transgression of the Watchers in Genesis 6 flooded human culture with systemic spiritual corruption, illicit knowledge, and violence. And third, the judicial disinheritance at Babel, where Yahweh partitioned the pagan nations, assigning them to the administration of lesser, rebellious spiritual beings. But here is Yahweh's epic counter-campaign. Tying perfectly back into Kaiser's canonical unity, the Promise Plan maps out how the Messiah and the Spirit systematically reverse every single cosmic rebellion. The resurrection defeats death, completely reversing Eden. The outpouring of the Holy Spirit cleanses human conscience, reversing the Watchers, and the Pentecost event in Acts 2 deliberately gathers those disinherited nations back together, triumphantly reversing Babel. It's incredible. Every single fracture gets an exact corresponding reversal.
Section 5. The Unified Olive Tree.
All of this brings us to what this canonical unity actually means for the community of faith today. A non-negotiable pillar of the Promise Plan is its firm, non-supersessionist stance. In Romans 11:18, Paul writes, "Do not boast over the branches. Remember, it is not you that support the root, but the root that supports you." See, Gentile inclusion is an expansion of the single commonwealth of Israel. It absolutely does not replace ethnic Israel, whose national calling and promises remain legally irrevocable. And this perfectly aligns with Kaiser's model of an unbroken, continuous plan of unity. Paul reinforces this beautifully in Ephesians 2, using the Greek word Sumpolitai, fellow citizens. Through the cross, that dividing wall of partition is broken down completely. Gentile believers are granted equal legal standing within a shared political commonwealth. You aren't replacing anyone. Instead, you're given full, unsecond-class citizenship in Yahweh's household alongside believing Jews.
And this leads us right into the renewed covenant. Jeremiah's new covenant is actually a structural renewal and a spiritual escalation of the original Abrahamic and Davidic promises. It doesn't abolish the old rules. Rather, it supernaturally rewires us from the inside out. What makes it new is that the Holy Spirit writes the Torah directly upon the human heart, granting us the internal power needed for genuine, loving obedience.
So let's bring this all home. Why does this actually matter for you and me? Well, first, it completely transforms how we read and teach the Bible, moving us away from reading it as isolated moralistic fables and toward tracing a massive cumulative promise. Second, it firmly repudiates Christian anti-Semitism and supersessionism, offering a really robust framework for healthy Jewish-Christian dialogue. And third, it grounds social justice, racial reconciliation, and creation stewardship not as modern political options, but as our ancient foundational royal priestly vocation.
As we bring all these pieces together today, I want to leave you with a final provocative thought. If the entire biblical canon is a unified promise plan, an epic campaign to reverse cosmic rebellions, and you are graciously grafted into this incredible story, how does viewing yourself as a royal priest in a renewed cosmic temple change your daily vocation today? Keep exploring, keep reading, and never lose your curiosity for the magnificent architecture of the Scriptures.